All right, guys, welcome back. This is week's episode of RX Radio, joined today by longtime friend, first-time guest of the show, Chris Tuttle. Chris Tuttle's a registered dietitian, like not like a nutritionalist or a nutrition coach with no credentials. Like he went to school for this stuff. Walks the walk, talks the talk. Chris, a former bodybuilder. We talk about his transition out of bodybuilding. We talk about his very health-focused, health-centric approach to both nutrition, bodybuilding. We talk a little bit about the state of bodybuilding as he found it, as he left it, what he's been up to since. Talk a little bit about his entrepreneurial background. Chris was super interesting. We first crossed paths when we were both sponsored by Animal back in the day. They put us on the road together with another handful of bodybuilders, and I was annoyed pretty much the entire time, as you'd imagine you would be. But Chris was my canary down the coal mine. He was up at 4 a.m. with me working on various business opportunities, which he discusses in the podcast. Super smart guy across the board. Some great nutritional takeaways. So do reach out to Chris on Instagram. Everything's in the show notes. And if you guys are interested, PSL1 still up for sale. This will be the last week that you can jump into this semester. So head on over to www.pre-script.com. It's on the main homepage. Click over to the L1. And we'll see you in class. Lectures are 4 times a week to accommodate for time zones. If you can't make it, no worries. Everything goes up into the Your Student portal to watch and review later, plus 7 lab sections. Well, it's 1 lab a day, or every 1 lab for every day of the week, rather. And that's kicking off. That kicked off 2 weeks ago. We can get into week 2 starting ASAP. So we'll see you there if you're interested. If not, head on over to Tuttle's Instagram. Tell him you like the episode. And make sure we keep boomers out of fitness. Remember, every share of RX Radio puts an old fitness influencer in a home. So do that. And we'll see you on next week's episode. Thanks so much, guys, for listening. Lundy, hit it.
You're tuned in to RX Radio.
You've made probably the most graceful of transition. Is it safe to say now that you have the arm tattoo that we've gracefully transitioned out of the sport of competitive bodybuilding? Is that what that signifies?
Oh, dude, 100%.
And how has that been?
100%.
Like, I know the identity, like people cling to bodybuilding, they cling to sports in general as an identity. How do you feel now as Chris Tuttle, not the bodybuilder?
Well, honestly, dude, the best way to kind of describe that transition and how I felt was I raced motocross professionally. All right. Motocross was my life from age 7, 8, all the way until I was 21. And then I went right from, I can't race anymore, breaking a bone every year, live in my parents' basement, spending every dollar I had racing, to going to college, finishing everything, getting my degree and all that stuff. And I'm like, I can bodybuild in college. Can't really bodybuild and race motocross. So I was like, you know what? I'll get into bodybuilding. I like it. And then I focused on bodybuilding and left motocross chapter behind. So fast forward all the years of bodybuilding and then learning that, like, my body's starting to, not function the same. I have to train with like limitations, and to be at peak performance in a bodybuilder, you can't do that. You can't expect to build muscle, be optimal with all these ailments. So, and I also said to myself, dude, I'm 37 years old. What am I doing? Right. It's not like bodybuilding's making me money. I already have a business. Everything's going great. So I should probably be smart and leave it behind for my health reasons. But I didn't have anything to transition to, dude, right? It's kind of like now you're at the age, like I went from motocross to bodybuilding, and that was great. And that was an easy transition for me, even though motocross in my mind is probably the best time of my life. And then now that I was there, I was like, man, like this is tough because there's no one thing I can really hyper focus on. So I was doing a little bit of everything. I was mountain biking, boxing. I was boxing consistently for almost 2 years. And that was a blast, just learning something new. And then now I'm just a little bit of boxing, mountain biking. I just bought a dirt bike again, just to dick around. Now I'm learning to do a little bit of everything and be happy.
Okay. Because what gets me is if I had to think of activities, hobbies, vocations, sports that are on other end of the spectrum, I would probably put bodybuilding and motocross racing at complete opposite ends of the thrill spectrum. Like I remember, I was telling someone this the other day. I remember distinctly the moment I first double rode on my friend's handlebars on his bicycle. I'm like, this is the craziest thing ever. This is nuts. I have no aspirations to get on a motorcycle because I have no aspirations to be dead earlier than I already plan on being dead. But it's like, to go from that motocross racing to, it's 11 o'clock, time for meal 3. That has to be like, how do you make that switch?
Well, believe it or not, my friend, when we started to get into competitive motocross and I was taking it seriously, my parents got me a trainer. And the trainer was like, dude, you can't be eating hot dogs, dude. Like, if you want to be good, you can't be eating crap. This is like 12 years old. And he goes, you got to be eating protein, carbs, fruits, vegetables. He made a balanced diet for me. And I didn't understand any of that. He's like, this is what you got to eat. He goes, this is how you got to train. And he would come to the basement, made my parents buy this weight set, and put me through like, kind of like you could say a more functional training, like a circuit, and he would kill me. And my body started to respond, like muscles, chest. And then I was like, whoa, look at this. And he looks at me and he's like, no. Don't start going down that road. He goes, bodybuilding and motocross is like trying to be a sumo wrestler and run your fastest marathon time. He goes, that's not going to work. He goes, you need to be able to maintain your max heart rate for 20 minutes. You got to be, muscles got to be strong to help prevent injury. You got to train like an athlete. This is what you're doing. So I always wanted to bodybuild, but he wouldn't let me. And I would sneak in curls and every once in a while and stuff like that. But he had me doing specific things, but my body responded to that. And the eating was very similar to bodybuilding in retrospective, like eating 5 feeds per day, eating complex carbohydrates, eating healthy, keeping body fat lower, which back in the day, racing motocross, all that calorie expenditure, you're not going to get fat. It's impossible unless you're eating like a total ass. So that was the transition, dude. So like the second I could stop racing and then all of a sudden eat to build and then train to build was smoothest transition of all time.
Now, in your tenure of bodybuilding, probably the most drastic change in the culture and subculture of bodybuilding since its inception. Basically, like we had Eugene Sandow early, turn of the century, 1901-ish era. War happened. The world was at war for basically 40, 50 years. And then, over from Austria comes this big fucking charismatic guy. And then bodybuilding was just kind of that. It was just kind of Schwarzenegger until probably around the time where you sort of dabbled your toe into it. It would have been, I don't know. Social media was even it was pervasive in the fitness industry when you started bodybuilding. Was that safe to say?
Bodybuilding was so much better without social media.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hold you to task on that because better in what? I mean, better in the sense of the purity of the sport, no doubt.
I just was more excited about it, man. And maybe because when you're young, you are a fan of what you're about to do. And then once you kind of move up in what you loved, it becomes different, like a job. But I can say, dude, I started in 2000. I stopped racing June 2004, immediately started bodybuilding and competed in November 2005. And the only people who knew you were competing were at your gym. And you didn't know who you were competing against, but it was never about taking pictures of yourself. And it was just like train, get there at 5 a.m. before school, get my cardio in, train, do this. I mean, I drove 2.5 hours every Saturday to see my coach in New York and then drove all the way back for the entire prep. And that's just how it was. And it was just exciting because it was more of like that individual sport where you go and you do your thing in the darkness, and then you come out and you compete. And then it became like, now it's like a clown show with everything that I see. I mean, no offense to people today, that's all you guys know, but I can't identify with it, man. I just can't identify with everything. It's just like, I don't know how anybody can train fully focused and hard when you're worrying about camera angles every set. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. What gets me is, I started training. The idea, I didn't even have a cell phone when I started training. I mean, I grew up poor. So like, it's not like I started training a long time ago. It was just like I was broken, couldn't afford a cell phone. But it's like the idea of cameras, Instagram, all that. What gets me now as someone who, I've never been a competitive bodybuilder. So I put myself at a certain arm's length because there's so much to bodybuilding and the prep that I've just never fully immersed myself in, right? Got into the powerlifting world. I sat on the sidelines, but what gets me is the culture vultures behind the marketability of the lone wolf bodybuilding mentality as like an at scale cheap ass brand off of Alibaba, like the athleisure branding around that whole mentality of like, oh no, I'm different than you. It's like, no, look, motherfucker, like you have a hashtag, like you're the same. But it kills me to know that a time when that was the culture, not because it was like a signal to another bodybuilder wearing your fucking dumb whatever brand shirt on the other side of the gym. It was like, you know, the old nodding of the head of the bodybuilder. Like this, I learned this at a young age from bodybuilders. That like the eyebrows up were like you were okay, and the eyebrows down was like leave me the fuck alone. Like if I was in the another gym with another big guy when I was younger, and if I got one of these, that was like, all right, hey, what's up? Like we're good. If I got one of these, like head down, I was like, I'm gonna go.
Yeah. Read the room.
Read the room. Yeah. And it's tough now because the room is so edited and curated and things like that. But it's interesting for you being in the position you're in, right? Like a person of, I can't even use the word influence because it has such a negative connotation. But like you are in a space that is so widely unregulated, like your academic background, which we haven't touched on yet, brings a level-headedness to just an absolute big top circus tent. So it's odd for you, or it's odd for me to hear you go like, well, you know, bodybuilding was better before because bodybuilding wasn't really a thing. Like you would have needed another job. If bodybuilding isn't what it was today, we both of you and I probably won't be sitting here talking and working in our living rooms. So how do you draw a line between like, okay, bodybuilding as the activity of going in and the pursuit of going in and getting better, but the double edge of that sword is like, we don't have jobs. Well, we have jobs, but it's, you know, it's a different, how do you reconcile that?
I guess I can just say, in as far as marketability and monetary, the monetary ability for you to make money through social media and fitness is obviously way better now. And I'm not upset about that in that aspect at all. I'm just saying, as a personal competitor, when I was competing, I found it more enjoyable when like when I turned pro, I didn't have social media yet. And I remember people being, oh, do you know who so-and-so is? So I'm like, I don't know who you're talking about. Like, it was never a concern of mine. I don't know who that is. Oh, you don't? Oh, check them up. I'm like, on what? They're like, on Facebook. I'm like, I don't have Facebook. I don't have any of that crap. I didn't have it until after 2013. And so I just enjoyed it. I think maybe because partially it's me, I'm old school. I just don't like it. I don't like having to film or take pictures. It's just not me. So maybe that's just it. But like after that, when it was a requirement to like film, do pictures, postings for Animal, it became less enjoyable than it was for me in the beginning.
So what gets me is I was watching the Olympia this year, and I usually try to tune in every year and see who's competitive, especially as you get to know a lot of the guys competing. And it kind of dawned on me quickly, like I've in the past, in various circumstances in my life, have had to watch actual pageants like Miss Universe or Miss World, Miss whatever, a nation. Story for another time. However, it started to dawn on me that the pageant, the superimposition of social media and bodybuilding is where the actual pageantry happens. So I remember hearing a term back in the day about, oh, he's a good ambassador for the sport. I remember hearing that for the first time and thought, oh, fuck. Oh no, this is bad. Because the ambassador of the sport, basically, like the way I look at it now, and it's so, I feel bad because you probably know what I'm talking about. There's a handful of bodybuilders that do this. If you're in vying and contention for top spots, and it's a coin flip, dude. Like you look at some of these guys, like how the fuck is anyone going to decide? They're all in crazy shape. They're all coming in crazy big, crazy lean, symmetrical. Like I start to see the Miss America, like, you know, or the question of, you know, what would you do if you were crowned Miss America? I'd be like, world peace. And it's like, well, you're a 22-year-old girl. Like, what the fuck do you know about world peace? I start to see that aspect come through in bodybuilder social media. It's like, oh, I need to be a good ambassador for the sport. So like and I, not to be derogatory, but from, you know, documenting you giving out turkeys at Thanksgiving to like taking pictures of your family at church, I really start to worry about the authenticity of bodybuilders because of the pageantry aspect that plays out on social media. Oh, we can't have him. He's a terrible ambassador for the sport. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Old school bodybuilding, who look better?
Bro, I know. I'm with you. The authenticity of question is social media drives that. I mean, I know and I know a lot of people in person who are not the same people on the internet. And then I've had people come up to me like, "Oh, bro, you know so and so? That dude's such a good dude." In my head, I'm like, "No, he's not. That dude's like a straight piece of shit, like piece of shit to his core." In my head, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, bro, you have no idea, and you're idolizing this person. It's that I know exactly what you're talking about in that regard. I mean, dude, Derek's number one right now, bro. Remember, we're in the road trip eating like omelets and whatever.
Oh my God. I was just with him a couple weeks ago. It's just, to me, I don't want to see the product, and I'm going to get your opinion on this. Obviously, Arnold had some contentious statements over the years about the state of bodybuilding, right? Was a big fan, outwardly facing, of Cedric McMillan's physique, rest in peace. And is the modern day product of a bodybuilder getting better or worse, in your opinion?
I don't know, because I feel like there was an era. I mean, I love the era of the 90s physiques, just the way they looked. But like, you also look at the physiques, they had smaller waists, they were much lighter on stage, and now they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I do feel that bodybuilding got a little out of control, and I do feel like it's coming back to a better state. My personal favorite is still the 90s, but I do feel like it's getting better than it was, where it got kind of out of control for a little bit,
Now, I've had this theory, because back in the early days, they used to do tall and short, right? Then we introduced category after category after category after category. And with the rise of classic physique, do you ever see it, or do you ever foresee it going just to one show again? Like Bumstead versus Quinton in a show?
No, because of money. I think, dude, if the money wasn't there, I think it might be, but now, because money, sponsorship, you want to attract as many people as you can. You're trying to contour to the greatest number of people. So you got to have all these categories. Obviously, as you know, we have wellness now. We have women's physique, we have women's bodybuilding, women's figure, women's bikini. So we have to have a division for everybody. And I just think that overall, it's never going to go down to one show. I mean, dude, some of these national shows will take like 5 days.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. Nuts.
Because it's nuts. So if there was no money, I think it would be condensed. But because of the money, it's going to only get bigger, I think.
Do you feel your proximity to bodybuilding has gotten closer since you've been removed from it? Like, I look at you now as kind of an important bodybuilding commentator. Like, your access, your time, right? Like, knowing you and how you operate behind the scenes with your businesses and with your family and with your dogs. And it's like, like we said off air, it's like, I don't have time for bullshit because I'm busy doing other stuff. Now that the time you would have had dedicated to training, right, and dieting and posing and all the things that come along with being a competitor, now that that's not there, do you feel like you have a more, not more skin in the game at this point? Like, do you feel like you are giving back to bodybuilding? Do you feel closer to bodybuilding now than you did before, because you're kind of, you're in the sphere of, again, influence within the space?
I'm going to say, yeah, more so. It just seems to have organically happened that way. I didn't intend to, or try to, or care to be honest. And Jordan, we know each other on a degree of knowing that we're both pretty real people, right? So I think, when your parents say something, if you do the right thing and you do what you feel is right, eventually things tend to come back around. And I think just me being who I was and never being a fake person or being influenced by negativity within the sport and just sticking my guns to who I was, I think that's what eventually just kept catching on. I mean, one, I can speak, I can talk intelligently with people about nutrition, a little bit to training, not to your level, but like, I have an understanding. I can talk to a lot of people. And I think that has had a lot of merit,
You mentioned kind of stepping away from bodybuilding, 37 years old. And, it's definitely become the elephant in the room in the last decade in the sport about health. Now, ridiculous physique even now. Like you're in annoyingly good shape for someone who's not a bodybuilder. So like kindly next time I'm going to have Anna send out like, please, the host requests that you wear sleeves on the podcast to not make Jordan feel insignificant. But it's like, what were there things in your career that you looked down the barrel of? And did you ever have any trepidation around prioritizing results over health? And like, was there a relative tipping point, or was there an aggregation of like, these are compounding factors at my age, whether it's a little bit of health, a little bit of lifestyle, a little bit of career runway, have you ever, like, how did you manage health then and now?
Jordan, let me tell you, my persona is not typically fit for a bodybuilder, meaning I was always very, very abnormally nervous and conservative about what the supplements use. Can we talk here or no?
Oh yeah. Dude, go nuts. Oh yeah. I'll go grab some darts. It'll be a party.
Dude. So like gear use is always very nervous to me. I was very, I educated myself a lot before I did it. I want to know about the health effects. My father's a physician. I had the ability to get regular lab work, even from right in the get-go. And for an example, to give you an example of how conservative I was, I had a coach for my first show, and he told me, dude, we're going to run Test Prop, Tren Ace. We're going to run some Winnie tabs and some clenbuterol. I didn't listen to him at all, and I just ran Test Propionate. I was like, I'm not taking Tren. That shit's too scary. Can't do that. I'm like, clenbuterol, that's going to blow up my heart. I'm not doing that either. It took me a long time to eventually use Trenbolone and eventually just work my way up over the years. Like I was always nervous, always around like very low doses for years. And very, I would avoid Anadrol. I wouldn't take so many things I wouldn't take and avoid. So I was probably more conservative than I actually should have been looking back, meaning I probably could have made it a little further along if I was just so fearful of using more. But then again, I put 45 pounds of stage weight running the same damn cycle, test, deca, and D-ball, and like it was 750 tests at the most, 300 to 400 deca at the most, and 30 mgs of D-ball before training. And I did that 10 weeks on and then 10 weeks off, 10 weeks on. And I said over and over again, and I put good weight on. So, I mean, hindsight, that's good. But I mean, being more advanced down the line, I was still always nervous. And so many times coaches have told me to take this and I didn't. I went way less. Always got lab work done. And towards the end, I was getting lab work done like 4 or 5 times a year. I've never once seen my creatinine out of line once. LDL, obviously a little bit out of whack, but that's usually I've been able to keep that under control. So I've always been very, very health conscious, probably more than most bodybuilders, which probably held me back. But in prioritization to life, I definitely should have prioritized bodybuilding when I had the youthness and the resilience of a younger body than spending so much time building my business. But then again, in hindsight, Jordan, it's like, I got the business. Bodybuilding's, once a lot of top bodybuilders leave, if they don't do anything with it, then now they're broke. But they have all these wins and trophies, but no money. But so I'm grateful for that. But I guess that's my answer.
Were there ever, all right, is there a short list of compounds that are on a no-go list always? That there'd be something where you would go like this, or if you're advising someone to lean on the more health conscious side, like, look, you can do it without X, Y, or Z drug. Like, what in your opinion, and I'm sure a lot of it's contextual, but like, what in your opinion are the ones that's just have no business being inside the human body?
DNP.
Nuts. Talk about it.
I scratch
for those of you. Okay, I need to backpedal because some of you, like, DNP is like you're if you know what DNP is. Can you explain to people who might not be familiar with what this is? Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to butcher it. I'll read the exact definition, but basically it was a chemical, I think a cleaning chemical or cleaning agent at one point, and workers that were using it were experiencing extreme weight loss back in the day. Then they isolated that it was a chemical within the cleaning thing. And DNP is a drug that people use to burn fat, but it's incredibly toxic. And a lot of people who do use it in the bodybuilding industries go, dude, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I think it is. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, with all the bodybuilding drugs and technology advancements in nutritional strategies, you can't get lean without taking DNP. You kidding me? Yeah. I mean, I diet natural bodybuilders all the time with nothing, and they get peeled. It's like you have clenbuterol, you have T3, you have Tren, Mass, Prop, and you can't get lean on that. Then you shouldn't be bodybuilding. Let's be honest.
Right. Yeah, I think DNP was actually first found in factories that were making dynamite because people
Yes.
within the factories were dying of hyperthermia. So those of you in Canada know hypothermia. Yeah, the opposite of that. They were burning from the inside out. Like their metabolic expenditure was so high that they were literally just ceasing to live. And people are willingly taking this as a drug to increase caloric expenditure and improve body composition.
Yeah, there. That's much better. Yep. Yeah, it's explosive, highly explosive. Yeah,
Can you imagine?
I can't grasp my head around that. I don't understand. That's for one. Two is Trenbolone. Like, I don't think people need to use Trenbolone to gain muscle in the off season. Like, there's a lot of other options you can use. I mean, obviously, to some point, advancements like when you're way, way, way down the line and you're trying to put on a little extra muscle, and like you're actually legitimately experienced, not an influencer, like a legitimate professional open bodybuilder. That might be warranted at some point, but the bottom line is like you're pushing a ton of food, your body weight's high, you're taking Trenbolone. The likelihood of you getting high blood pressure is probably going to be present. The lack of estrogen activity within the drug doesn't make it the most ideal for just overall mass. There's other options, right? And then save it for preparation. It's kind of like if you're a bodybuilder and you're going to be using Tren in competition, you're doing 3 shows a year, and then you're going to use Tren in the off season. What are you going to be trending it all year round?
All year round.
Right. You know what I mean?
When you started, I mean, having the foresight and the background knowledge to be proactive with your health, but we learned a lot. I mean, we learned as an industry, we learned a lot. The research has obviously evolved over the course of like the last decade plus. What was your initial metrics that you tracked when you started down that road of like getting into the enhanced bodybuilding world? And what were the metrics that started to weight differently as your career advanced?
So I was very lucky. Again, I had my father was a physician, so I had him to bounce a lot of knowledge off of, because obviously when we see things in red, we're like, ooh, that's not good. And I'll be like, Dad, look at this. Is this bad? He goes, oh, well, no, that's nothing to worry about. That's just slightly over. And because this level's normal, that means that's totally fine. You know, like I'd be, oh, okay. Because I would see it. I'm like, oh my God, I got to do something. And he goes, no, that's nothing to worry about. So he taught me a lot about that. But generally, as a bodybuilder, LDL, HDL, hematocrit, hemoglobin, AST, ALT, GGT. I'm sorry, guys. So LDL and HDL are your lipids. Obviously, triglycerides are a component, but usually LDL and HDL are more affected by anabolic use. AST, ALT, and GGT, that's more your liver. Renal would be your BUN and your creatinine. But I have a lot of people check cystatin C, which is a way of estimating your EGFR, which is your kidney function, without taking into account muscle mass. The more muscle mass you have, the higher your creatinine will be, the lower your EGFR will read. So sometimes someone who's very muscular or weight trains a lot can see elevated creatinine level, which might reflect kidney damage when there's not actually kidney damage present. So cystatin C would be a way around that. But those are usually the labs that I looked at the most on a regular basis because they're so impacted by whatever compounds you use. You know, obviously you use orals, your liver enzymes are going to be elevated and your HDL is going to go to like nothing and your LDL might potentially go up. So knowing the effects of what drugs do, you can kind of understand that what's normal on the drug and what's not normal off the drug. And I remember Dad telling me this one time. I was like, Dad, I want to get my lab work done again. He's like, why? I go, because I just want to know what it is. He goes, you know, it's going to be messed up. I'm like, I just want to know how messed up. Because his take is like, well, if you're taking the drug and you know it's doing this, it's going to be messed up. I know, but it's good to know where it is with that particular drug, you know, because
Has there ever been a time where you saw blood labs and we were like, oh, fuck, okay, it's outside of the predictable range in which I'm okay with.
Yes.
It's outside of my margin. Okay. And how did that affect your behavior?
I changed it immediately. One of my friends was like, bro, you should try running Anadrol and D-ball together.
Sick.
And I'm like,
that's a real friend.
Yeah. I'm like, that's a little extreme. No, he said, no, just do like 25 mgs of Anadrol and like 30 mgs of D-balls, combine it together. And I was like, okay. So I did it with just like 500 mgs of tests, got so strong. And then I checked my liver enzymes at 4 weeks in and they were like 580, you know, 580 ALT was like 640. My HDL was like a 10 and LDL was like 180. I'm like, I'm done with this crap. I stopped. So at that point moving forward, I actually like never really used orals again in the off season.
you've been in an interesting position. I mean, those of you probably picked up on, the one of your businesses is a coaching business. You have clienteles from all walks of life, including competitors. So you've had, the aggregation of a ton of information from a ton of people that you've worked with over the years. What type of variability do you see in responsiveness and the ability to mitigate some of these more insidious hematological, side effects or effects, as Broderick Chavez would say? Like, I know people who have run next to nothing and you see their bloods and it's complete fucking bedlam. I've seen people run to the kitchen sink and they're like, I'm a little bit concerned. My hematocrit is 47. I was like, what?
Is your gear
that's right. Well, right. But they're putting on 20, 30 pounds. How much variability in, because when I think of genetics and bodybuilding, right, there's the classic, his muscle bellies are this, insertions are this, he's bubbly, he's blocky, all of these sort of, and we know what they mean. We know what people mean when we say that stuff. But like, to me, some of it has to come down to some sort of genetic coding for responsiveness and ability to manage this toxic load. Like, what type of variability have you seen where you're like, this dude is fucking Wolverine? This is crazy.
Oh, dude, I've seen them. I've seen them both. And just like anything in bodybuilding, you need genetics on both sides, inside and outside. That's what I usually say. And I had a guy get his pro card at nationals. We checked his labs. I told him to check his labs 4 weeks post-show. Excuse me. But he checked him 2 weeks post-show. And everything was normal, even his HDL. And I was like, bro, I would normally question if your gear is real, but clearly you competed as a super heavyweight and you got your pro card at nationals. And I go, you're a freak. You're a freak on both sides, outside and on inside. I've never seen anybody's HDL be normal, even on TRT. Usually, like,
even natural. Yeah. 2 weeks post-show natural, you'd be fucked.
Yeah, exactly. And for those who don't know, even if you're natural and you weight train really heavy and hard, you can have very elevated AST, ALT. Your creatinine might be up. So you might have some markers also be off. Your cholesterol might be a little off. Testosterone will be in the bucket. So there, people who are natural are not scot-free either post-show, but he was normal. And then I've also seen somebody run, it was 400 mgs a test and 300 mgs a deca, and his blood pressure went like 180 over like 100 in like 3 weeks. And I'm like, dude, bodybuilding's just not for you. Like, you're done. Like, that's it. And he was already lean. It was just genetically his effect to androgens. Like, his body was just like, nope.
You talked about nutritional interventions, and obviously with your education, your background, how much can be done in managing the risk associated with, performance enhancing drugs with nutritional intervention? And where's the line?
You can a lot, but as you might know, genetic variability really determines how effectiveness that nutrition or that environmental changes will occur. With all my clients, I really have been able to mitigate a large percent, maybe 80, 90% of the impact on your serum levels through nutrition and environment. Some people, I just tell them, like, dude, you're going to need blood pressure medication. Like, there's no way around it. You're going to need blood pressure medication, or you're going to need cholesterol medication. That's just, your dad and your mom have high cholesterol. Your sister has high cholesterol. There's just no way around this, right? But most of the time I can do a lot. But the downfall of that is, man, it's like, here you are trying to build muscle, which creates a calorie surplus. You're trying to put weight on in light of having a poor appetite. So now people are venturing towards other foods that might cause a little bit more of an LDL rise than normal. Calorie surplus, especially in carbohydrates, usually does trigger the increase in LDL and triglycerides to a point. Some people more than others. Then you add gear to that. So it's very difficult. But, in those people, those situations, I tend to really hyper focus on carb cycling, cardio, activity daily level, healthy fats, really kind of bringing down their saturated fat as much as I can to a degree, because then eventually you're going to affect their results, right? Because if you're too clean and everything, they're just not going to get what they want. So, dude, it's a balance, man. Like, I can do a really good job at managing LDL. I would say LDL is probably what I'm best managing at, second blood pressure. And then obviously kidney markers. And honestly, the vast majority of people with kidney issues is because they're completely belligerent and they don't watch their blood pressure. And obviously keeping your blood pressure and keeping markers on that is relatively easy. Just getting a nice cuff, getting a large cuff at home, 13 to 19 inches. Check that, 3 or 4 times per week in the morning, get a baseline and then watch it very carefully. And we obviously can do a lot of changes with that. But that being said, people with high blood pressure, a lot of the times they're using gear, they're heavy body weight, they're salting everything, and they're using copious amounts of caffeine, pre-workouts. And dude, 8 out of 10 times I cut the pre-workouts out and the caffeine, their blood pressure's normal. And that's with the androgens. That's with the androgens and the food, because they're jacking themselves up, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned a few things there that triggered a question for me. Obviously, like the registered dietitian and the bodybuilder and coach, it's almost so, with what we see in practice and the anecdotes you hear, they're almost diametrically opposed. Like some of your because here's the thing, some of your contemporaries in the purely academic nutrition space are nuts, and most of your contemporaries in the bodybuilding coaching world are nuts. But rather than straw manning both sides, if you could steel man and be like, okay, what does the registered dietitian world get right about bodybuilding? But what does the bodybuilding coaching world get right about nutrition that the RDs don't understand? Like if you had to give them their best side coming from both worlds, as far as okay, look, yes, the science says this, but as a coach who's done this, actually this stuff works. And from the other side, hey, look, I know the bro science says this, but the science is probably best to be imparted this way on your clients.
I know you've experienced this probably with Jordan, your training is education sometimes puts you in a box, right? It puts you in a way of thinking. Oh, this is what it says. This is what I've learned. That way doesn't work. I've never heard of that. This is what you do. And that's the dietitian side, right? That's not ethical. You shouldn't be doing that much. And then the bodybuilding side is not really worrying about health, not being as level-headed, but also looking outside the box and doing what works. So my education, as you stated earlier in the podcast, has really made me level-headed, looking at things and being like, dude, what are you doing? 1, that's unnecessary. 2, that's not healthy. 3, there's another way of going about that with the same result. And then on the bodybuilding side for me, I'm able to understand that what works. Like I don't need to find you a study that says this works. I do this every day of my life, and I see this work every day. Yeah, there's some science behind it, is in theory, meaning I can explain to you what I think is happening, but I couldn't provide you a piece of paper and be like, oh, this study with 1,000 people between 22 and 25 who did this, experienced this. I couldn't do that, but I see it, So it's kind of the education I'm really thankful for, especially my master's, is because the level-headedness it's given me in me being able to actually read studies where people just read one line of an abstract that kind of gives their confirmation bias of what they want to hear, and then they regurgitate it. And then the coaching side again, and being personal experience, is knowing that this is what works, and then running with that. But dude, I've been ridiculed before within the RD community, being like, how do you partake in such extreme measures of dieting people when it's doing this psychologically? And I'm like, we are doing something to win. If you look at anybody who trains a top athlete, their consequences, of course, are mitigated to a degree. But if you're trying to be the best at something, it's not 100% healthy, nor is it not going to be extreme. So that's who I work with. I'm not taking Joe Blow off the street who wants to lose 5 pounds and being like, all right, here's your anadrol stack. Here's all this crap. Here's all these crazy measures,
What is it about nutrition that gets people so cranked up? I've never once heard a podiatrist look at LeBron James and be like, you know what? Really? With the Jordans, he's wearing Nikes again. It's like, yeah, dude, it's LeBron fucking James. Let him do whatever the fuck he wants. You see his feet? They're fucked. They're fucking gross. Even people who like feet, which are fucked, won't there's no one that looks at LeBron James's foot and goes, but why is nutrition this snake pit of emotion and reaction and bias? What is it about it, in your opinion, coming from both sides of the aisle? Why do people get so cranked up? Eat a carb, don't eat a carb, I don't give a fuck.
I think I think there's 2 ways to look at this. One is, was it the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? There's a ton of that. There's a ton of that within the nutrition field. And then the other is there's so many different methods that do work, that do have results, that all come down to obviously one outcome. And that's the laws of thermodynamics, like being calorie deficit, being calorie surplus. There's so many different ways you can change things. There's no one set black and white answer. Kind of like if If you have an infection, you treat it with penicillin, right? That's just like, that's what we do. We're not going to give somebody with an infection Tylenol and be like, your infection will go away. So I think that's one big difference in nutrition field is one, we don't really know a lot about it, considering how much we're learning all the time, all this new research coming out about the gut microbiome. Two, Dunning-Kruger effect. You get people who have a little bit of information. They think they know a lot. It worked for them. And they think that universe is going to fit everybody. And then the last is just there's so many different ways of going about something that do work. And people like to attach to that one idea. And they do not want to consider that other methods might work. Because one, it might hurt them and their ego, their feelings or whatever. And when people come to me all the time, they go, Chris, I want to ask you about something before we work together. What is your philosophy of nutrition? I go, well, what do you mean? Well, what's your method? Are you a low carb guy, high carb guy, low fat guy? And I'm like, I'm an everything guy that makes it sustainable for the person who gets the results we want. That's it. Because I've done everything. I might not be like put somebody on a soup diet or something ridiculous, but like in regards to like having a balanced diet, low carb, high carb, low fat, I do whatever works for that individual. Sustainability is king, right?
Do you find yourself ever talking yourself out of a position with that very level-headed sales pitch? Like, do you find people tend towards those diet identities?
You're saying, do I end up changing my position based on somebody's pre-perceived notion of what they want to do? Is that what you mean? Like someone comes to me.
Have you ever had someone come to you and be like, well, what's your shtick? And you're like, science and like adaptability and knowing that there's a bunch of different roads that go to Rome. And they're like, I was really hoping you were a low carb guy. Like,
oh yeah, all the time. All the time. Because I get people come to me and they're like, like they'll come to me and they'll be like, hey, I have two good stories. I get a lot of people who say, hey, I noticed you don't give me that much protein. I'm like, you're middleweight. You don't need to eat 400 grams of protein a day. And they're like, oh, really? So I'm like, okay, what are you used to eating? And they're like 425. And I'll give them a plan that brings them down to like 350. I would normally have them way lower, but I'll bring them to 350 and then let them see how much better they feel with giving them fruits, other carbohydrates. And then a month goes by, like, dude, I feel fantastic. I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to bring that protein down a little bit more. And I'm going to give you more of this. And they're like, oh, okay. And they do it. Another month goes by. They're like, I'm feeling better and better. I'm like, perfect. We're going to bring that protein down a little bit more and then get them to where I want them to be. But some people are so in shock. They're so hell bent on one way that like you give them something else, they're gone. The sustainability not there. They need to see it and feel it for themselves. I had a guy once, he goes, dude, I want to prep on what is called a backloading diet. And at the time I was like, what? What do you mean backloading? Like you can eat all your food at the end of the day? And he goes, well, kind of, but I operate really well with junk food. And in my head, I'm like, okay, whatever.
Is DK Metcalf? Who the fuck is this?
Dude.
Jesus.
And he's like, what I like to do is have 2 clean meals and then the majority of my calories be in the last 3 meals of the day, but 50% of those calories be like honey buns, cookies, junk food. So bro, I prepped this dude for a show and I got him shredded.
Shut up.
With eating stuff like that. And because you know how it is, man, if there's consistency, I know what he's doing. I know what to manipulate to change over time. And he got lean and he got pretty much striated glutes. And we did it with that. I mean, obviously there's a micronutrient standpoint. It's trash, right? I mean, like you're giving yourself just junk food,
What I struggle with in the bodybuilding world is, yes, basic principles of thermodynamics work. And I feel like nutrition and drug strategies are oftentimes trying to patch the holes in the training boat, right? What gets me is like, if it fits your macros, or it was sort of like very in vogue a few years ago, and then pendulums have swung and different spheres of influence have had different impacts on fasting versus, IIFYM versus calories in, calories out, whatever it is. What gets me with if it fits your macros, honey buns, motherfucker, is performance.
Yeah.
No one, right? Like, how do you go into the gym and sitting there with like, I just don't understand, like the Pop-Tart crowd. I was like, what the fuck are we doing here? At a certain point, like, it has to be hindering. And we could probably look at this somewhat in a, like, we don't have to break it down to the biochemistry, but like, if I'm thinking neurotransmitters alone, And I'm thinking of the state of someone that's just consumed a ton of sugar before training. It's like, is that someone who is, at peak arousal? Like, dude, I had 3 Pop-Tarts. I am not at peak arousal. I'm at peak nap. I am at peak on the couch.
No, I'm with you, man. And how do you describe it? It's kind of like the alcohol drinks every day doesn't know what being hungover feels like, right? It's kind of like they're so kind of used to that. That's how they operate. And not to mention, there's a massive placebo effect with a lot of things. I remember reading a study recently about the perception of what is being told to what they're eating calorie wise, where they're giving 2 different shakes or 3 shakes. One was a control group, one was a calorie surplus group, and one was a calorie deficit group. But the calorie deficit shake, they were told they were consuming a shake that was greater than the calories they needed in a day. And then the shake that had a calorie surplus, they were told that the calories were less than they needed in a day. Exclusively, the people who were told that they're eating less but were eating more said they were so full. They're like, I'm so full. Like I don't need any more food because I had that shake earlier, even though it's calorie deficit. And a vast majority of the people in the group who were consuming the shake, the calorie surplus, they're like, oh man, I'm going to be hungry later. I'm hungry again. So when I get somebody who says to me, intra-workout carbs work so well for me, I'm like, in the off season, when you're eating 800 grams of carbs a day, I'm like, that's just mental. Your body's so saturated and loaded with carbohydrates. Like, you might benefit from fluid, some electrolytes, some salt, sure. But do you need an extra 30 grams of carbs on top of 800 you're consuming in a day? It's in their mind. And then you take it from them and they're like, oh, dude, I was like bombing out in the middle of my workout. I was kind of down in energy, very low. I'm like, dude, come on. So, dude, there's so much this in bodybuilding. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
You talk micronutrients, you talked electrolytes. Like, how often are these the real big rocks? Like, we get it. Carbs, protein, most people are over-consuming protein or over-consuming carbs, depending on your diet, identity, whatever you like. But, those two jump off the page at me. What are the things that, when you get down to the brass tacks and you've worked with someone for, a handful of months, what really starts to drive the needle as far as progress and performance?
Sleep and lack of variety in the diet. 100%.
Okay, so hold on. So sleep, we can return back to. So lack of variety.
Yeah.
Explain that. Like, good or bad? Like, hey, you don't have it, therefore digestibility. You don't have a lot of variety.
Yeah, every day they're eating. Oh, I get this morning, I don't have time for make breakfast, so I make a shake and I mix oats in a shake and I shake it up and I drink it and I have scoop peanut butter. And then for meals 2, 3, 4, I have white rice, chicken, hot sauce. And then I'll add a little bit of olive oil. No vegetables, no fruits, no change in starches, no fibers. And then dinner, I usually do like a large steak, like a ribeye, and then maybe some more white rice or like a potato. And most of it's just rice. And I'm like, and they usually complain of digestive issues, low energy. They complain of lack of appetite. I'm like, no shit, you're eating the same thing every day, all day for months. When you do not challenge your intestinal tract to consume a variety of food, the gut microbiome doesn't get exposed to that fiber variety, doesn't get those probiotics to feed them, to keep them healthy. So the diversity declines. And then eventually you start to have digestive issues. And then when you have something off plan, all of a sudden you're gassy, you're bloated. You're like, oh my God, my stomach hurts so bad. Yeah, because they created that environment. And as you might know, when your gut microflora is very compromised, it lacks diversity, you can develop colitis-like IBS or colitis-like symptoms. You can develop more fatigue. You can be at more risk for other diseases. So it's important to protect and keep your gut flora healthy. You feel better, digest food better. Not to mention the lack of micronutrients that's in the diet that people are taking the synthetic form, like a multivitamin. It's not the same. Like, you can isolate these things in supplement form, sure, but all the things you're getting from food is much different. Case in point, in my nutrition cancer class in my master's, that when they do look at large groups of people that have cancer or survival of cancer, the people that ate a balanced diet of fruits and vegetables lived much longer and survive cancer longer at whole than people who just use supplements to get their vitamins. And they didn't have that done. Obviously, it's a observational study, so there's other factors involved. But in the theory is it's not the same, right? Foods, there's other phytochemicals and things in foods that your body needs, that uses. You can't just have everything in supplement form. It doesn't work. So that's usually the biggest obstacle I find. When I give people like less rice, a little fruits and vegetables, throw some dates in there, they become a little more regular, diversify their fibers, change their meats up. They start to feel better. And when you feel better, you train better. When you feel like shit, are you training awesome? No. When you're sluggish, tired from shoveling all this food with digestive issues and getting poor sleep, are you breaking PRs in the gym? No. When you feel awesome, you're usually performing pretty damn well, And so I tell people, I'm like, listen, the diet we're going to get you on and what we're going to try to implement is for you to feel awesome every day. If you feel awesome every day, you're not going to need to take 3 scoops of pre-workout to get going for an arm workout. Like, come on now, and then I address it that way. And that's the other red flag too. When someone's like, oh, dude, I need my caffeine. I go, what do you mean? They're like, oh, I need it in the morning. And then I need to pick me up midday. And then before I go to the gym after work, I take like 3 pre-workouts. And I'm like, bro, you're hurting unit. Like if you need stimulants to just function, like we got to figure out, you got to get yourself excited, motivated, and energetic without anything. And then use those ergogenic aids to give you a step above, not just to be normal or functioning.
The nutrition side and the digestion thing has been really big, especially as it pertains to like getting on stage, right? And you see the pervasiveness of rice, obviously it's like one of those ubiquitous foods in the world, but like cream of rice recipes. Like, God, I fucking hate bodybuilders. If I see one more goddamn cream of rice recipe pre-workout, I will lose my goddamn mind. But it's so like, to me, when I started to see the monotony, and like I don't pay that close attention, but when I saw the monotony in nutrition and the lack of variability, oftentimes it was cited because of digestion. Oh, I go with cream of rice because, digestion, I got to keep getting, gastroenteritis down or acute inflammation in the bowel down. And it's like, oh, hold on. Like you said, did you create this environment? How hard is it to unpack that though? Like introducing variability. Like if you go, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this, is there a refractory period where the body's like, where the fuck's my rice? Who the fuck is this guy? Who's this Tuttle asshole? Where's my rice?
I have a ton of clients who come to me for this exact reason because they know I had a history of ulcerative colitis, which I don't have anymore. And you're 100% right. They got themselves into that situation. And then people pigeonhole themselves into this small group of foods because that's all they can tolerate. And now they're down to like 4 foods. And then it will continue to get worse. So I tell people, like, listen, to get yourself out of this hole, you're going to have to start implementing a variety of diet into your diet in small amounts. So I had a guy who had terrible digestive problems. I'll use him for example. Blown out UC, ulcerative colitis, we all know. You're shitting blood mucus 14 times a day. A disaster. Went to the hospital, hospitalized at one point. He's on meds now and all the set. But his gut, he's in remission, but his gut's not perfect. And I go, bro, you got to get a variety in your diet. I'm giving you a variety. You have to do it. Have you been doing it? No, I've been skipping this, skipping that, just doing this. I'm like, bro, it's never going to get better. And we're never going to be able to push the food high if your digestive system is not going to be able to handle this quantity of food. You have to diversify your diet. So I gave him like 3 foods to have in small portions. So for example, when you're reintroducing a food, it's once per day in a small amount. When I say a small amount, it'd be like 50 grams of broccoli. All right. That's a small amount. And you do that for 5 to 10 days. Tolerated. Then you go up to 100 grams, 50 grams twice per day. But you use specific foods. I don't just be like, hey, eat a variety diet. I'd be like, all right, I definitely want these vegetables you can have more than twice per day. These vegetables you can have in a small portion only once per day. I want you to start with Bubby sauerkraut, 15 grams just once per day. And we're going to lower your rice portions. We're going to lower here. We're going to add a little potatoes. So it's very small amount. And then, dude, they feel great immediately. They might be like a little gassy at normal because when your gut is not used to assimilating certain fibers, you can get gas forming in the intestinal tract, which is normal. But eventually the gas goes away. I'm like, bro, I can eat a whole bucket of broccoli and not fart at all because I've conditioned my digestive system now to do that. So like people are always, I love when people say to me, I can't eat that. I can't eat that. I can't eat that. I get really gassy and bloated. You've done that to yourself. Now, however, There are obviously certain foods that are known to cause gas: Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, onion, garlic, etc. However, there are also a lot of people out there that eat garlic all the time with never a single issue. And it's because they've acclimated their GI to handle that. So when you don't have a food for a long time and then you have it in a decent amount, you're going to be messed up. There's no way around that. But if you do it right, it's really not that painstaking by any means. It's not like I cut out rice completely either. It's just you're slowly introducing foods into the diet as tolerated and working up to a more diverse group of fruits and vegetables. Primarily, rice is still in the diet, chicken's still in the diet, but a lot of times I'll remove steak. I might give them ground bison instead, or venison if they hunt, or salmon. Something different than, because a lot of people do have trouble digesting like your sirloin for whatever reason. I don't know exactly why, other than some people just don't tolerate it well, especially if it's every day.
Now, the Tuttle nutrition empire has touched more than just stage bodybuilder, competitor, show types. What general population and bodybuilding community, when it comes to maybe nutritional habits, nutritional hurdles, preferences, what group can be more difficult to work with? Or what are the difficult parts about dealing with each group, of dealing with someone who's general population, wants to just get fit or healthy or look better without their clothes on, versus a competitor? Like, if I had to give you one client for the rest of the life, are you picking bodybuilders or are you picking Gen Pop?
Probably Gen Pop, because it's more gratifying to change somebody's life.
Got it. I like that. Good answer. Good answer. You're a good ambassador for the sport.
Better change my tune quickly. I don't want to be. No, I'm just kidding. Bodybuilding is easy. They're very one-dimensional and they think only a certain way. So getting them to think a different way is difficult, because bodybuilders tend to be very stubborn, very control-oriented. They want to control every aspect of everything. So they're a little more neurotic. That's would be the obstacle for them. And then the general population is getting them to plan ahead, because you have to have a plan when you're general population, and not to be so influenced by their environment. People who are general population are heavily influenced by what their family, their peers, or their friends think of them on the way they eat. And as much as silly as that sounds, as a bodybuilder or an athlete, like, nobody's telling me what I'm eating. I'll tell you that right now. I'll punch you straight in the face. Like, you're not telling me what I'm eating. So I have that. I never had that problem because I don't give a shit. But a lot of people do. Like, they'll come to me like, I went to dinner and like everybody kept asking me like, yo, why aren't you eating? And I said to them, I am eating. Like, I'm going to choose the steak, the potato. They're like, oh, dude, have some spinach dip. Have some of this. And he goes, and she's like, the rest of the night, everybody just kept trying to get me to eat everything. And they're on me like, dude, live a little bit, relax. And like, they have a lot of trouble with that, because some people don't want that type of attention. So I do give them strategies to help, get around that. But that's their biggest obstacle, man, because most of the, I read a statistic that if somebody comes from an obese family and they are obese, their chances of fixing that obesity and becoming a normal body weight for the rest of their life is almost nil, because their environment is conducive to eating those foods. Like, you have to run in that environment. Like, you almost have to separate yourself from your friends. It's like, is the drug addict going to stop being a drug addict if they keep hanging around drugs and people hanging to drugs? I'm sorry. It's reality. It's true. It's like, if somebody can have a difficult time transitioning out of bodybuilding, if all they do is hang out with bodybuilders, probably, right? You're always going to think, oh man, I'm going to jump on a cycle again. I'm going to maybe jump on a show again. But if you find a new group of friends, a little healthier lifestyle, it's going to change. So for them, it's the hard part. And I have had a lot of like heart-to-hearts with like some of my very overweight clients being like, listen, I'm not saying you have to disown your family or your friends, but like your whole weekend's your social events are all geared around pizza, indulging in mass quantities of food. Like, you're not going to survive. Like, you're not. Like, you've lost 100-something pounds. And if every weekend is about you bringing Tupperware to all your friends who are all overweight, don't exercise, and run that life, like, you're probably not going to make it. So you're going to need to have two sets of friends. You're going to need to have friends that are encouraging. not friends that are trying to manipulate you to fail, because unfortunately that's the reality of a lot of people in America.
When you came out of bodybuilding, I've only ever known you to be in shape. And it's so, because I have bodybuilders where I have like fat pictures of them and it makes me feel better because I'm like, the God King bleeds. You're always in shape. And it's fucking annoying to be your friend. Have you ever just been like what's been the fuck it moment? Or when you have fuck it moments, assuming you are in fact a human being, like what do you reach for? Like what's the good shit? If you say fucking strawberries, I'm going to fly down to Texas and beat the shit out of them.
No. Barbell's Bake Shop cookies. So like our best friends here, her wife, our best friends, this girl, Erica, she runs Barbell's Baking, and I order cookies from them all the time. And I have a big stash of cookies downstairs, and like the best cookies of all time. Like they don't have any, it's all real ingredients, no shortenings, no oils, nothing. And that's my thing. And I'll crush some cookies. But dude, like I eat awesome all the time, except on like Saturday and Sunday. Because especially this time in my life, I eat whatever I want. When I go out to eat, I'm eating whatever I want, and I'm coming home and eat like a bunch of cookies. But I still keep my weight, reasonable. And Jordan, this is the main reason, is when I get too heavy, I don't feel good. I don't feel productive. Boxing was like impossible when you're heavy. So it's like when I got lighter, I was like, I'm getting hit in the face much less, I'm not getting tired as much. So getting heavier hurt every aspect of my life. My sleep was worse. I was more sluggish, more tired, getting hit in the face more in boxing. Everything was harder. So I'm like, I don't want to be above a certain weight. So the second my weight goes a certain spot, I'm like, clean it up for 2 weeks. I'll be right back down where I was and then go from there.
I love the self-awareness around the cognitive piece. I think that was our first. So if Chris and I were a romantic comedy sitcom, we met at 5 a.m. working because we went we rode on the road together with Universal. Yeah. They did this like bullshit. They did this like, it was great. It was fun. It was a great memory. But like for those of you who are unfamiliar, I think it's probably still on YouTube. Chris and I were sponsored by Universal, a supplement company at the time, or at the same time, and they brought us down to a trip. Now, of the 5 people or 6 people that were in the house, me and you basically hated everyone and hated the idea of content. And we would both wake up real early because we had to do because I remember being in the kitchen and hearing like just fingers scuttling across the keyboard. And I was like, it's fucking roaches. This is like a nice house. What's going on? And I saw you like laying down with pillows under your stomach, laying on the floor with your laptop. And I was like, is this motherfucker working right now? And every morning, 5 a.m. But the fact that you tied nutrition back into cognitive health is like, some people might be at that point where the awareness of their metabolic state is so that if it's manipulated, they feel a certain way. Like that is so far from people's radar. Like, oh wait, if I eat this, I don't feel as productive at work. That's wild.
But you know what it is, man? Jocko, I know you know Jocko, that Navy SEAL guy, and he says this. It's when you get the vast majority of people that are totally looking for short-term gratification. That's all they see. They're like, this tastes good. That's all I know. Oh, it feels good for 10 minutes with 24 hours of repercussion. They don't see that. They're just after the instant gratification of whatever they're doing makes them feel good at that time. My brain doesn't work that way. And I'm like, I look at that, I'm like, oh my God, this would be so good, but I'm going to fall asleep in an hour and I have a podcast and I got to write a paper and I got to do this. I can't do that. Maybe I'll do it later, or maybe I'll do it on Saturday night. So like, dude, when I'm like on my diet during the week, like my productivity is just like on point. And then, I eat terribly for a few days. It's like my productivity is crap, like making mistakes. I'm like, oh, did I put the coffee on? Oh, crap. You know what I mean? Like I'm just not with it. And I hate that. I can't stand that.
Has the flip been easier or harder to switch on and off since you've been competing? Like I remember, so you finished the opposing module course as part of your website, as part of your service offering. And I remember watching you go through it and I'm like, yo, is Tuttle coming back? Like, dude looks nuts right now. And I remember at the end of it, you're like, oh, I can finally stop dieting for this fucking course now that I've done recording it. And I'm just like, wait, you just like woke up one morning and was like, oh, okay, work. I got to be in shape to do this posing thing. Okay, turn it up. And then, okay, I'm done. Turn it off. Does the generator take a little bit more time to warm up these days? Or can you still just now, okay, I'm getting too heavy, sleep, all that stuff, cognition?
No, it's very simple because I'm so regimented anyway.
Fuck you.
So I'm super regimented. Like I still travel. I'll still bring my food. I'll still eat out when I eat out, but like I still have like everything backups and ready to go. I don't like being caught and having to eat crap food. I don't like it. That's just not me. I'm not happy that way. So I'm happy when I have the most energy and I feel the best. That's my motivation, is to feel good. And I will do whatever it takes to feel that way. So like when I transitioned to normal life into getting ripped, it was relatively easy. And on hindsight, it was really easy just because I didn't really change anything. I still boxed. I only weight trained 3 days a week. I boxed 3 days per week, did mountain biking one day, and I did walks for my dog. And I got in great shape, used hardly any gear, didn't use any fat burners. And it just came together. I have to say, boxing was impossible towards the end, dude. Like being on that low food and like low body fat. Oh my gosh. Gas out in like 15 seconds.
There has to be a sweet spot in the middle where you feel like fucking Muhammad Ali before the available energy
when I was coming out and my carbs were back up, but my body weight was still low and I was very lean. Oh, dude, it was like round after round after round after round. I was good. I was good.
Now, do you just do this cyclically throughout the week now? Like, I'm really curious what, your plans with work had, how, because your life seems like the decisions get made in the kitchen first. Like, oh, I need to do this. I feel like you sit there and like, I have to write later. I feel better if I work with this vegetable on that vegetable. Oh, and I have to be on a podcast later. I'm going to use the red pepper over the green pepper or some shit. Like,
I won't do anything, but I don't really change any variability in my diet based on that. However, if I got out of the gym before coming here and I was in a hurry and I was going to choose to eat something knowing I had a podcast, I'm going to be choosing real food. I'm not going to be choosing cream of rice, fruit, and a shake. When I drink whey protein powder and I have cream of rice and fruit, I will get sleepy within 35, 45 minutes. Really? I know why, but like I will. So today when I got back from the gym, I had white rice, sourdough bread, fruit, beef, broccoli, and sauerkraut. And that was my meal. And I never had a slump once. So like, I know which foods for me kind of get my energy level even. So like, I just won't do that. The other day I had what I have to do. I had to write something and my buddy's like, I'm like, dude, I have 10 minutes to eat. He's like, dude, just slam a shake. I'm like, can't do that. Can't do that. I'm going to be like,
You're like me and like drugs. I'm like, today feels like a modafinil day, or like, no, today feels like an Adderall and mushrooms day. Like you're that with food. You're the responsible version of me, but we've known that for some time. I mean, you got a lot of stuff in the works. Obviously, your ironic emergence as in the social media space of bodybuilding is both hilarious to me because I know your general disposition towards social media, but I also know how beneficial your voice is in the industry. So with what you got going on online, work stuff, like what is the next, what does the next year look like for you? And I, as of a feeling you have it broken down by like days and weeks and regimented and all scheduled and shit.
Honestly, man, I'm actually taking a step back with a lot. Like I have a wait list for coaching until about May now. So I'm only taking a certain amount of people on. I make a rule myself with competitors. I only take 4 competitors on per weekend, meaning I don't want any more people competing than 4 people per one weekend. So I book weekends. When I look at their dates, I make sure there's not more than 4 people per weekend. So I don't want to have to deal with that. I just want to be able to pay attention to my clients fully, get the attention they need without myself stressing out. I'm still going to continue to coach, but on a lower level. I don't want to be in the computer 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I don't want to do that. I got the drink more. I've been, working with this, trying to market that more, no pun intended. And got the posing module I created because I was making so many videos for so many of my clients over and over and over again. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get shredded, do a posing module, edit it, make it look professional and fancy, and then people can purchase for a reasonable price, and then they can learn how to pose themselves instead of me sending all these videos constantly. Save up more of my time and generate a little more revenue, another asset. And then, of course, our Tuttle equity, we're working on that with real estate and investment properties with big apartments and stuff like that. So you guys interested, that's there. But honestly, dude, doing a lot of travel next year. I'm going to be traveling with some of my clients. My client, Jordan Hutchinson, he's going to be doing his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th pro show next year. He placed 5th last year at the Texas Pro. So I'll be going with him to his shows. got a bunch of my close clients I've had for a long time. They're my friends. They're going to be competing at nationals next year. I'm going to go with them for that because I know a lot of them are going to be real close to getting there, and I want to be a part of that. And taking my dad to Ireland. My dad's getting old, 73. He's not going to be around forever. And he always wanted to visit Ireland. And I know he would never do it himself. So my wife and I are taking him to Ireland, and we're going to go touring the whiskey factories and, drink a little booze and just have a little Irish fun. So got that going on, and probably going to visit Japan. I want to be more well-versed, man. Got to do a little more traveling.
Good. I'm here for it. Because the only thing that I heard that was travel was Ireland, because anything that has a tanning booth and a pump up room with bands is not travel. Sorry. Anywhere you go where people are walking around in silk robes and there's liability waivers you need to sign before you check in hotels because they're worried about you're going to stain the sheets. That's not travel, my friend. So yes, you're going to travel to Tokyo. You're going to travel to Ireland, and you're going to go to Pittsburgh. That's not travel.
Yeah, going to Cancun. Actually, that's non-bodybuilding related in October. And hopefully maybe make the go visit UK. I'm friends with James Hongshead and visit James in the UK probably a week maybe after the Arnold. He competes.
The new gym that they're putting together, him and JP look unreal.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're getting out of the house. I'm glad to hear you're getting off the laptop, and altogether, very glad to have caught up, man. I really appreciate your time. We'll put all the stuff in the show notes. Chris, Tuttle, thank you so much.
Jordan, thank you, man. I appreciate it, dude. It's been a long time, buddy. It's been a long time. I will say this. I had a blast with you on the road trip. It was funny, man. Your commentary, a lot, mumbling on your breath. But remember G6 and his fish? You're like, dude, if you open that fish, I'm going to punch you in the face.
Yeah, it was a highlight reel in itself, man. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you out in the wild.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Cheers, man.